Hi, I'm MC Jessie。大家好，讀你聽2.0，今日繼續讀 Miguel de Cervantes 嘅 Don Quixote 唐吉訶德。我哋讀到第10節啦，呢一節嘅名叫做 Of the Pleasant Discourse That Passed Between Don Quixote and His Squire Sancho Panza。今次就係一個騎士主角，一個侍從阿山曹，佢哋兩位辯論喎，係有啲爭辯喎，不過咧係 pleasant 嘅，講到明。咁啊，即係會唔會搞笑居多咧？我哋睇下啦。跟住我哋交俾 Costa 同大家讀嚟聽。
Now by this time Sancho had risen, rather the worse for the handling of the friar's muleteers, and stood watching the battle of his master, Don Quixote, and praying to God in his heart that it might be his will to grant him victory, and that he might thereby win some island to make him governor of, as he had promised. Seeing, therefore, that the struggle was now over, and that his master was returning to Mount Rocinante, he approached to hold the stirrup for him, and before he could mount, he went on his knees before him, and taking his hand, kissing it, saying, May it please your worship, Señor Don Quixote, to give me the government of that island which has been won in this hard fight. For be it ever so big, I feel myself in sufficient force to be able to govern it as much and as well as anyone in the world who has ever governed islands. To which Don Quixote replied, Thou must take notice, brother Sancho, that this adventure and those like it are not adventures of islands, but of crossroads, in which nothing is got except a broken head or an ear the less. Have patience, for adventures will present themselves from which I may make you, not only a governor, but something more. Sancho gave him many thanks, and again kissing his hand and the skirt of his hauberk, helped him to mount Rocinante, and mounting his ass himself, proceeded to follow his master, who at a brisk pace, without taking leave, or saying anything further to the ladies belonging to the coach, turned into a wood that was hard by. Sancho followed him at his ass' best trot, but Rocinante stepped out so that, seeing himself left behind, he was forced to call his master to wait for him. Don Quixote did so, reining in Rocinante until his weary squire came up, who, on reaching him, said, It seems to me, Signor, it would be prudent in us to go and take refuge in some church, for, seeing how mauled he with whom you fought has been left, it will be no wonder if they give information of the affair to the Holy Brotherhood to arrest us. And faith, if they do, before we come out of jail, we shall have to sweat for it. Peace, said Don Quixote. Where hast thou ever seen or heard that a knight-errant has been arraigned before a court of justice, however many homicides he may have committed? I know nothing about homicides, answered Sancho, nor in my life have anything to do with one. I only know that the Holy Brotherhood looks after those who fight in the fields, and in that other matter I do not meddle. Then thou needest have no uneasiness, my friend, said Don Quixote, for I will deliver thee out of the hands of the Chaldeans, much more out of those of the Brotherhood. But tell me, as thou livest, hast thou seen a more valiant knight than I in all the known world? Hast thou read in history of any who has or had higher mettle in attack, more spirit in maintaining it, more dexterity in wounding or skill in overthrowing? The truth is, answered Sancho, that I have never read any history, for I can neither read nor write. But what I will venture to bet is that a more daring master than your worship I have never served in all the days of my life. And God grant that this daring be not paid for where I have said. What I beg of your worship is to dress your wound, for a great deal of blood flows from that ear, and I have here some lint and a little white ointment in the alforjas. All that might be well dispensed with, said Don Quixote, if I had remembered to make a vial of the balsam or virables, for time and medicine are saved by one single drop. What vial and what balsam is that? Said Sancho Panza. It is a balsam, answered Don Quixote, the receipt of which I have in my memory, with which one need have no fear of death, or dread dying of any wound, and so when I make it and give it to thee, thou hast nothing to do when in some battle thou seest they have cut me in half through the middle of the body, as is wont to happen frequently, but neatly and with great nicety, ere the blood congeal, to place that portion of the body which shall have fallen to the ground upon the other half, which remains in the saddle, taking care to fit it on evenly and exactly. Then thou shalt give me to drink but 2 drops of the balsam I have mentioned, and thou shalt see me become sounder than an apple. If that be so, said Panza, I renounce henceforth the government of the Promised Island, and desire nothing more in payment in my many and faithful services than that your worship give me the receipt of this supreme liquor, for I am persuaded it will be worth more than 2 reals an ounce anywhere, and I want no more to pass the rest of my life in ease and honor, but it remains to be told if it costs much to make it. With less than 3 reals, 6 quarts of it may be made, said Don Quixote. Sinner that I am, said Sancho, then why does your worship put off making it and teaching it to me? Peace, friend, answered Don Quixote. Greater secrets I mean to teach thee, and greater favors to bestow upon thee. And for the present, let us see to the dressing, for my ear pains more than I could wish. Sancho took out some lint and ointment from the alforjas. But when Don Quixote came to see his helmet shattered, he was like to lose his senses. And clapping his hand upon his sword and raising his eyes to heaven, he said, I swear by the Creator of all things and the 4 Gospels in their fullest extent, to do as the great Marquis of Mantua did when he swore to avenge the death of his nephew Baldwin, until I take complete vengeance upon him who has committed such an offense against me. Hearing this, Sancho said to him, Your worship should bear in mind, Señor Don Quixote, that if the knight has done what was commanded him in going to present himself before my lady Dulcinea de Bosso, he will have done all that he was bound to do, and does not deserve further punishment unless he commits some new offense. Thou hast said well and hit the point, answered Don Quixote, and so I recall the oath in so far as relates to taking fresh vengeance on him, but I make and confirm it anew to lead the life I have set until such time as I take by force from some knight another helmet such as this and as good. And think not, Sancho, that I am raising smoke with straw in doing so, for I have one to imitate in the matter, since the very same thing to a hair happened in the case of Mambrino's helmet, which cost Sacripante so dear. Signor, replied Sancho, let your worship send all such oaths to the devil, for they are very pernicious to salvation and prejudicial to the conscience. Just tell me now, if for several days to come we fall in with no man armed with a helmet, what are we to do? Is the oath to be observed in spite of all the inconvenience and discomfort it will be to sleep in your clothes, and not to sleep in a house, and 1,000 other mortifications contained in the oath of that old fool the Marquis of Mantua, which your worship is now wanting to revive? Let your worship observe that there are no men in armour travelling on any of these roads, nothing but carriers and carters, who not only do not wear helmets, but perhaps never heard tell of them all their lives. Thou art wrong there, said Don Quixote, for we shall not have been above 2 hours among these crossroads before we see more men in armour than come to Albraca to win the fair Angelica. Enough, said Sancho, so be it then. The God grant us success. Enough, said Sancho, so be it then. And God grant us success, and that the time for winning that island which is costing me so dear may soon come, and then let me die. I have already told thee, Sancho, said Don Quixote, not to give thyself any uneasiness on that score, for if an island should fail, there is the kingdom of Denmark, or of Sobradisa, which will fit thee as a ring fits the finger, and all the more that, being on terra firma, thou wilt all the better enjoy thyself. But let us leave that to its own time. See if thou hast anything for us to eat in those alforjas, because we must presently go in quest of some castle where we may lodge tonight and make the balsam I told thee of, for I swear to thee by God, this ear is giving me great pain. I have here an onion and a little cheese and a few scraps of bread, said Sancho, but they are not victuals fit for a valiant knight like your worship. How little thou knowest about it, answered Don Quixote. I would have thee to know, Sancho, that it is the glory of knights errant to go without eating for a month, and even when they do eat, that it should be of what comes first to hand. And this would have been clear to thee hadst thou read as many histories as I have, for, though there are very many, among them all I have found no mention made of knights errant eating, unless by accident or at some sumptuous banquets prepared for them, and the rest of the time they passed in dalliance. And though it is plain they could not do without eating and performing all the other natural functions, because, in fact, they were men like ourselves, it is plain too that, wandering as they did the most part of their lives through woods and wilds and without a cook, their most usual fare would be rustic viands, such as those thou now offer me. So that, friend Sancho, let not that distress thee which pleases me, and do not seek to make a new world of pervert knight-errantry. Pardon me, your worship, said Sancho, For, as I cannot read or write, as I said just now, I neither know nor comprehend the rules of the profession of chivalry. Henceforth, I will stock the alforjas with every kind of dry fruit for your worship, as you are a knight, and for myself, as I am not one, I will furnish them with poultry and other things more substantial. I do not say, Sancho, replied Don Quixote, that it is imperative on knights errant not to eat anything else but the fruits thou speakest of, only that their more usual diet must be those, and certain herbs they found in the fields which they knew and I know too. A good thing is, answered Sancho, to know those herbs, for to my thinking it will be needful some day to put that knowledge into practice. And here, taking out what he said he had brought, the pair made their repast peacefully and sociably, but anxious to find quarters for the night, they with all dispatch made an end of their poor dry fare, mounted at once, and made haste to reach some habitation before night set in. But daylight and the hope of succeeding in their object failed them, close by the huts of some goatherds. So they determined to pass the night there, and it was as much to Sancho's discontent not to have reached the house, as it was to his master's satisfaction to sleep under the open heaven. For he fancied that each time this happened to him, he performed an act of ownership that helped to prove his chivalry.
唔該晒 Costa， 呢節就係一個輕鬆嘅少少嘅，我又唔可以話係辯論嘅，即係一個少少對於騎士精神嘅，對於騎士條約嘅講解啦、啲解說啦、啲彈述啦，主要係由上而下嘅嚇，Don Quixote由上而下咁向辛祖去灌輸啦，而辛祖一味就會提出佢嘅問題，然之後就會反問啦，然之後就會話我都係冇讀過書㗎，我唔識字㗎，你講咩就咩啦咁樣，咁就不了了之啦。同埋呢度都有講啲好貼身嘅嘢咧，關於呢兩個人騎士同埋呢個侍從，佢哋對於日常生活起居飲食啊嘅一啲諗法啊、啲原則啦，一個好好嘅補完啊！即係如果去到呢個位，你已經中意咗呢個角色，你俾呢個角色吸引，呢一個咧就係可以話係一個好嘅補完，我咁講，令你更加認識到呢兩個角色，而又唔覺得悶，因為佢哋嘅作息啦、佢哋嘅起居飲食啦，係透過呢一個簡短嘅對話交代出嚟，係生動有趣。好，我哋睇下有咩字同大家分享先。題目啦 ，discourse， 呢個 discourse between Don Quixote 同 Sancho 啦 ，discourse 係名詞嚟嘅 ，written or spoken communication or debate 爭論爭辯。nicety，nicety，N-I-C-E nice-T-Y nicety 形容詞嚟嘅 ，a fine or subtle detail or distinction。A detail or aspect of polite social behaviour 喺文中咧就有提到 nicety 啦，咁係形容一個好 precise 一個準確係一個好準確嘅事情。Pernicious P-E-R-N-I-C-I-O-U-S pernicious 形容詞嚟嘅 ，having a harmful effect especially in a gradual or subtle way 係一啲慢性嘅傷害。長期嘅侵蝕啲唔好嘅嘢，但係好 gradual 嘅，好 subtle 嘅，你唔覺嘅，好緩慢進行 pernicious 慢性侵害。好，我哋今日咧就講到呢一度，我哋下一節再睇下，我哋睇下呢個二人拍檔休息完啦，之後有啲咩刺激嘅事件發生。下一節再讀一讀你聽，拜拜。
If you like this video, make sure to comment, like, share and subscribe. Adios.